Thanks for tuning in to more college football talk on the OFN Today. For this Friday, the 14th of December, 2018, the college football bowl season for 2018 begins in less than 24 hours. And Marc Lawrence of Covers.com will join me to preview some key games. We'll also take a look at Marc's Playbook Bowl Report as the OFN Today starts now. This edition of the OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com and Covers.com. Covers.com features live scores, stats, and odds, and is considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, so Marc, I got to ask you, are you still the president of the Fire Adam Gase Club?
More than ever.
I figured that.
Yeah,
another win, and another lucky win. Because this was really a lucky win.
You think?
Yeah, a little bit. But
Yeah,
another cover though for the see these are usually the ones you'll go with though, aren't they? The fact that the Patriots and the Dolphins continue to win and cover at home. So you actually had to buck your normal trend way because of Adam Gase.
I did, no question. The bottom line here is Tom Brady's really struggled in Miami in his career.
Yeah.
And he did again this past Sunday, to the point where it looked as if he was going to add, or I should say turn that around. But the bottom line here is that Miami Miracle turned the fates and the fortunes of Patriot backers the other way. So bottom line here is Miami now has to take off and go play an angry Minnesota Viking team this week.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people would look at that game and probably jump all over the Dolphins being a 7-point dog after what happened last week. I'm the exact opposite. I actually think Minnesota is going to put a pounding on them. I think they're going to rebound after their embarrassing loss in Seattle, and they're just a better team than Miami anyway, and then Miami's got to be coming off that miracle win, and you know how hard it is watching football as long as you have to come back after an emotional win such like that. Now you got to go on the road and face a team that just wants to just play as fast as possible to get that bad taste out of the mouth from last week.
The way I can best relate that victory by Miami last week, Greg, would be this. The product that we use as a condiment, mayonnaise, okay? There is also a wannabe mayonnaise. It's called Miracle Whip.
Okay, I've heard of it.
Miami was the Miracle Whip.
Okay.
They are the wannabe mayonnaise, the Miami Dolphins.
All right. Very
and
nice.
I don't like spreading Miracle Whip on my sandwiches when I can have mayonnaise. So,
okay.
So you won't find me making a case for the Miami Dolphins in the near future.
All right, sounds good. Let's talk college football because the bowl season begins tomorrow. Before we get into the bowl games, I want to ask you, I was looking over the championship game props, and that's always a good way of trying to, especially if you do like Alabama, if you do like the favorites, I guess it's or at least one of the favorites, it's a good way to try to see if you can make a little bit of money. Because the favorites are, Alabama is a 1-2 to win the championship, and Clemson's right around 3-1. So you're not going to make a whole lot if you just go that direction, especially if you like Alabama. But if you can correctly predict the championship game itself and who wins, then the odds go up. So I don't know. I mean, I was looking at some of these, and I probably myself, the one I would probably go with would be, because you got to go with 2 to make it interesting. Otherwise, why do it? So I'm going to go with Notre Dame. Because I still don't know about Oklahoma. I don't know. I'm going to take, because first of all, I want to see who's the quarterback at Alabama. I don't know who's going to start. And if Hurts starts, I think Oklahoma's got a much better chance. If that Tago kid is healthy and he's much healthier and ready to go, then I'm definitely more afraid of him. So I'm going to go Alabama Notre Dame, which is, if Alabama beats Notre Dame, it's 6-1. So why not do that if you like Alabama? And because I think Notre Dame's got a good chance to beat Clemson with a freshman quarterback. And Notre Dame over Alabama is 16-1, which is okay too. Again, considering Notre Dame's 10-1, but at least I if I do like Notre Dame, at least I'd get Alabama also at 6-1 to beat Notre Dame, which is not going to be easy for Notre Dame or Oklahoma to beat both of those teams to win a championship. I know that's going to be really hard.
Well, I wouldn't disagree, with the logic. My thinking to win the national championship is that I am going to fade Alabama along the way. Number one, they're the defending national champion. Number two, we've never had an undefeated team win the college football playoffs to date. And Alabama would have to beat both of those teams to be just that.
As a heavy favorite.
As a heavy favorite, exactly right. So, regardless of who they're playing, you're going to be getting, some attractive odds by fading Alabama, whether it's with Oklahoma or with the winner of the Notre Dame-Clemson game. If it ends up being Clemson will have that revenge chip on their shoulder from the playoff semifinal loss last year. And if it ends up being Notre Dame, as you mentioned, there'll be a nice price to an undefeated team. Notre Dame you'd have a matchup of two undefeated teams, and one of them obviously then would become the first undefeated national champion. I just don't feel it will be Alabama. My take is I think Clemson will beat Notre Dame, and I think if Oklahoma doesn't beat Alabama, I think they could scare their socks off. And the bottom line here is I'll be fading Alabama in likely both of these games.
Well, Clemson over Oklahoma would be 10-1. So that's not bad considering you're at 3-1 if you just go Clemson. So that's not a bad idea as well. Because I agree. I mean, I think though that the chances are more likely that Alabama wins the semifinals and loses the championship than loses the semifinals. That's just the way I feel. Because we all know it's so hard for Alabama after a disappointing performance for them to have another disappointing performance again. That's especially in a big game situation.
True. If you call the Georgia game a disappointing performance, just given the fact from the point spread, yes, it was. The bottom line is they beat a pretty good Georgia Bulldog team. And they did it in pretty impressive style to come back when their back was to the wall. So, but I think the bottom line to me is the spotlight focus pressure is going to be squarely on Alabama throughout these playoffs here.
Yeah.
And being that undefeated national champion here, I think it's very, very tough for young kids to overcome.
All right. Now the 2018 Playbook College Football Stat Report is out, the Bowl Stat Report. And so they can order this by just going to playbook.com?
Go to playbook.com and either off the homepage or in the Playbook store, you can order a copy of the College Bowl Stat Report and have it in your hands in time for the bowl games. It'll bring you all the way through the January 1st bowl games and lots of good stats, facts on teams and coaches, trends in the past, bowl histories. There's a bunch of good handicapping data inside this bowl report.
Yeah, some of the things I was noticing, you got your stats, you have your 2-minute handicapping notes, and you also have a section there, teams records this year versus bowl teams. So I think that's interesting. One of the ones I noticed, and there's a lot of them, but I just picked out one to tease the public of what they can get as far as part of this playbook. So, for instance, you have recorded here that Arkansas State is 0-4 straight up and against the spread versus bowl teams. So I find that very interesting as they're going up against Nevada as a 1.5-point favorite. Now, I didn't really have a take on that game, and I kind of still don't. I think that's a flip of the coin game. But that's a very interesting way of looking at it because that is important to know how teams fare during the regular season against the better teams in college football.
I think it's a real critical point. If you haven't been able to take a bowl team down before in your favor, I need you to tell me why you're going to do that in this particular game. The other side of the coin is if you take a look at that particular game in the bowl report, you'll notice that about Arkansas State, the manner in which they come into the game and the way teams come into bowl games is heavily important to what we can expect from the handicap looking at the teams and the way they come in. But Arkansas State comes in here on a 3-0 straight up and ATS win run. That's very, very difficult for teams that are doing just that to pick up and improve improve on that. They're oftentimes penalized at the weight because of the win streak that they're on. And secondly, the other team is more focused for that football team. So with Arkansas State being on this 3-0 straight up and ATS win run, actually 4 in a row, but 3 by the parameters of which I'm talking about.
Sure.
Those teams have really struggled in bowl games. So you've got that. You've got them as a favorite against a bowl opponent who just was embarrassed. You take a look at Nevada, their last game, they went to UNLV and they lost straight up as a 14-point favorite. There's nothing that'll get a team's attention in a bowl game more than coming in red-faced and embarrassed. They'll bear down and they'll buckle down and they'll focus for the football game, as opposed to the opposite side where you win a big football game, perhaps you're not as wired in. So bottom line to me is I think Nevada makes for a nice handicap against Arkansas State.
Yeah, tough. That's the thing about the bowl season is obviously you got to. That's why it's important to have one of these reports by you, because there's so many different trends and stats that you can use, and it's not like you just let me just pick the one that works best for me. It's sort of it's a great tool to be able to, because what you want to have is you want to be able to kind of draw a line through each team and then look through something like what you have, your playbook, and go through it completely. And it's almost like a pro and con checklist. And if you've got more pros than cons for one team, like a lot more, like you all of a sudden look and you go, wow, I got 5 really good stats that say this team A should win this game. And then on the team B side, I've got nothing that says that they're going to win this game. Then, hey, I'll go with team A. I mean, all the trends, all the stats seems to point that way. And it's a game I kind of was thinking about going with that team anyway. So that's why something like this really helps. And it also, again, this isn't just about promoting it for tomorrow. This is about having it ready as the entire 3 or 4 weeks, unload here, and especially when you're taking a look at conference breakdowns and things of that nature. This will help kind of get you kind of jump-started, because you look at, just for instance, the last couple of years, and I don't know if you take this into consideration as well. I would think you would. I know some of the other handicappers that I've spoken to wouldn't, but I know you would. And that is, for instance, and we have a few of these matchups where you got the Sun Belt versus the MAC, and if you look at it, the last 2 years, the Sun Belt teams surprisingly are 8-3, straight up. The MAC teams the last 2 years are 1-10. Matter of fact, MAC teams are 8-27 straight up the last 6 years.
Well, I pay a lot of importance to that. It's all about, if you will, class. It's much like horse racing, depending upon which class you reside in and what you're expected to go up against and try and beat. And I think there's nothing better than putting teams from conferences on the measuring tape, on the scale, and weighing them against other teams in their conferences. I think it's a huge tool when it comes to handicapping games. And, you can look at trending also within all of that. The Pac-12 conference and how poor they've been the last 2 years. I believe it's 4-11 straight up and 3-12 to the spread in all bowl games the last 2 years for the Pac-12.
Yeah, they were 1-8 last year.
Exactly, and they were terrible the year before that too.
Yeah.
So suddenly, the tractions come out of the Pac-12 when it comes to bowl games. They're just not competitive. So if you're going to be going out and want to make a case for a favorite in a bowl game that's out of the Pac-12 conference, like you say, this is all about checking the boxes.
Yeah.
Checking all the boxes, and if you're checking out the boxes with Pac-12 football teams who are struggling here of late, and you cannot make check marks to that Pac-12 team, you better pass the game or move on, one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is I'll go through all the games, and then I'll have my little check marks to the teams that I like, just based on watching them all season and just my impressions and the odds and anything else that I already know, whether it's injuries or, of course, players that are going to go to the draft and they're not going to play in the game, coaching decisions. The coordinators are gone. The head coach is gone. They're leaving for another job. So those I already know before I go into any historical or even season-long trends. And then I go into those trends as almost like backup. And that's going to really push me over the edge one way or another. And sometimes I might look at a game and really not have an indication. Well, I'm at 51%, 55%. But then I look at some trends and I get really, really impressed by those trends that do kind of say, you know what, maybe not my top pick, but a pick nonetheless, a pick I'll go with because I believe in those trends. Matter of fact, you have another thing called conference records, straight up and against the spread in bowl games. So this is a little bit different than what I just went over as far as just straight up. And this also has to do with odds. So you break them down depending on, the odds of the games and things of that nature. And I'm just going to give an example. And again, you got a bunch of these. So I'm just going to give one example like I did with the Arkansas State one. You got an AAC bowl trend where AAC teams are 4-0 against the spread as dogs of 7 or more. And the team that qualifies, Central Florida.
So if you'd like Central Florida in the game as a handicap, this is when you utilize trends to add to your handicap. This is very important, okay? Because I would never play a game on that trend
just
alone.
That one trend, correct, yeah.
No, but what I will do is I will add that trend or use that trend as an additive to my handicap. And if I've come up with Central Florida as a play in this game for a bunch of other numerous reasons, and I am going to, it's sure nice knowing that when you're going to use that play that you do like knowing that AAC conference stat, which brings you to Central Florida in the game.
Yeah, and actually, we can kind of segue the Pac-12 1-8 last year to a game that's actually my top pick of the bowl season. And, again, a lot of this, as I said, and we've talked about this before, and it's just the way it is in the bowl season, it's about trying to also predict which teams are going to care. Because so many times over the years, you're going to get about 25% of the games, maybe even more, because a lot of games, 39 games, you're going to get about 25% of them where teams just don't care. And they're going to be blowouts, and you're going to be watching the game by halftime. You're going to go, why did I pick that team? They don't even care. How could I have figured that out? Well, that's the trick. You got to try and do your best to figure it out. So my 5-star is going to be a combination of knowing a team cares, throw in the fact that I've got myself a hell of a bowl coach, and I've got the fact that you got Pac-12 1-8 last year versus Big Ten 7-1 last year in bowls. Urban Meyer's last game, Ohio State favored by 6 over Washington. This has got to be my top game. If I lose, I lose. But at least I know my team, which is a talented football team, is going to play their asses off.
Those are all excellent points, and you know exactly they'll be dedicating this game to win one for the Gipper in that game with Urban Meyer. So, that being a starting point, and then everything else case you've made and built up behind that, all supportive to Ohio State, the Pac-12's poor record in bowl games. Urban Meyer's great record in non-conference games. You can go on and on and on to make the list, but the bottom line is you're going to check all the boxes for Ohio State in this game. The question then becomes: at what point can you make a case for Washington?
As far as the odds,
what is that? Yes, exactly.
Okay.
The truth is that and it's always good because you have to acknowledge both sides of the coin in every game.
Sure.
You can't be blind. You can't be blind to just the one side that you want to make a case for.
Sure, yeah.
Washington's playing some really good football right now.
Defensively, they are.
Yes, they were struggling mid-season, but the truth of the matter is, if you look at this is what I really love in this bowl report. We have a stat log in there. It's a game log, just like a horse racing form, and you can follow the stat logs of every team that they've played so far, thus far this football season here. And if you look at the Washington Huskies coming into the game here, you'll see that up until they beat Washington State, they were on a 6-game point spread losing streak.
Yeah.
Okay. All 6 of those games that they played, they were favored in all 6 of those football games. And they didn't perform badly in the stats. If you look at the stats in the stat bowl report, you'll see red check marks next to the teams, their opponents. Those check marks mean that they out-yarded the opponent. And look at Washington State has an abundance of red check marks, meaning that they outplayed or outgained their opponents in football games almost all year long. So the games they were losing to the spread, they were out-yarding their opponent. Then what did they do? They went to the underdog against Washington State and won the whole game. Now they're coming up as an underdog here in this football game against Ohio State. So, if you're going to make a Washington Husky case, that would be the case I would make, that they were playing some pretty good football coming down the stretch, better than their point spread record indicated, and they could be a dangerous dog. Yeah,
and the one that I would use is the fact that the strength of their team is their defense, and I've said this before, Dwayne Haskins very rarely this season has had to deal with a good defense. And when he has, and I don't even consider, look, Michigan's was a phony good defense, or it was a bad matchup defense, because that was just terrible. But when he had to face pressure, and he's only had to face pressure twice this year, and those two games were TCU and Penn State. So if you watch the film of those games, you see Haskins had to deal with a lot of pressure in those games, and they won the TCU game because of defense and special teams, not because of Haskins. And they beat Penn State because James Franklin doesn't know what he's doing. So those were games they could have easily have lost. They were really outplayed in both games. So that would be another thing for me, just not a stat thing, just a visual thing of if Washington's defense, which, I mean, they got that Ben Burke-Kirvin kid, who I think is going to be an underrated pro. I mean, very good safety. You got Taylor Rapp's another good safety. So they have the physical defense. If you see early in the game in the first quarter that Haskins, maybe there's a couple of 3-and-outs, maybe he throws a pick, maybe he's throwing on his back foot, could be a long day for Ohio State.
It could be, and you couple all of that, because Haskins also, along the way of the course of the season, although he put up some big numbers, he missed a lot of wide open receivers along the way. But the truth is, he connected to a lot of them as well. The other side of the coin here is what we called out in the bowl stat report, is Ohio State was the worst team in penalties this year of all the bowl teams. They continually beat themselves with stupid penalties, and they're also number 119 in red zone offense. So here's this powerful Ohio State offense that ranks only 119th in the nation once they do get into the red zone. That's not a good number as well, because it means when they get there, they're just not converting like they should be. So, again, this is making cases for both sides of the equation in the football game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fundamental, a lot of emotional reasons to be on Ohio State, but there are reasons that you can look at Washington in the game as well.
And let's also not forget they probably should have lost to Maryland, Ohio State. But again, remember, this is why I said the reason I'm taking the game and it's a bowl situation is because this is Urban Meyer's last game. If it wasn't, this would not be anywhere near one of my top picks. This would be a flip of the coin game in my mind. Another game I really like is, and this is also more of, this one is more of a, I'm not going with any major trends or anything like that. Just based on what I feel, and that is Texas A&M as a 6-point favorite against NC State, without Kelvin Harmon, who's going to the draft early, their best player. Without Jermaine Pratt, their best defender, he's going to the draft. NC State hasn't beaten anybody this year. They've had a lot of, they beat ACC teams and a bunch of nobodies. Texas A&M, meanwhile, from the SEC. So SEC, ACC, that's a one-sided affair, except for Clemson. That's it. A&M, Jimbo Fisher is a good bowl coach. It's also his first bowl game there. They haven't won a bowl game in 3 years, so he wants to, be the white knight and change the culture there. And this is another step in changing the culture, is winning a bowl game. And I think they are just I think NC State's going to be outclassed in this game.
Well, they look to be on paper. That's the main reason A&M comes in the favorite in the football game. And, there's some issues with NC State that don't sit well with players opting not to play in this game, getting ready for a National Football League draft. And the word isn't even been cleared yet whether or not Finley's going to play. Now, if he doesn't play, there's going to be a big, big loss.
Finley? I get a joke out of guys like that. That guy has absolutely no chance of playing pro football. You have me and you have stronger arm strength than Ryan Finley.
Well, the bottom line is he doesn't believe that, okay, and his agent doesn't believe that. And if he believes that he has a chance to get drafted, he will sit out this football game. So
well,
that
take
would
it
only
now.
add,
Take it now before it goes off the board.
if it happens, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
But there's reasons to beat A&M in the football game. They have one, I think, far more superior talent, especially young talent on the football team. Jimbo Fisher knows NC State pretty well from his days in the ACC.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Although he did struggle against NC State themselves, he's only 2-6 to the spread in those games against NC State, but he does know the conference pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's one of the more. I'm going to let the game go because it's not that I can make a lot of cases for NC State. It's just that I cannot make a lot of cases for A&M. So it's a game that it doesn't really catch my fancy.
Yeah, that's why I said I just think there's a better team, and I do think they'll be motivated because Jimbo Fisher wants this win. All right, let's then go to another game that is one of my top picks, and I'm going to go, and again, the same thing. This has nothing to do with trends or anything like that. This is just football, and that is I'm going with Army as a 3-point favorite against Houston, and the Cougars are just one injured bunch. This is just I can't see an Army. I mean, not wanting to play a bowl game. I don't see that. They're not gonna have any Navy hangovers. I mean, that's just that they always play Navy every year. So this has been a great season for Army. You got a Houston team. Ed Oliver's going to the draft. They fired the defensive coordinator after the season. Their starting quarterback, who was having a great season, is out for the year. True freshman's got to play in a bowl game, and they've got other defensive lineman injuries that have hurt them this year. And without all of those defensive linemen, including Ed Oliver, they got to try to stop the triple option with the 99th ranked rushing defense. So good luck with that one.
Yeah, I think it's really an uphill battle for Houston in this football game, and I think Oliver not playing is a huge loss for the football team. I mean, he is their entire defense. What little defense they had, because they were horrific defensively. He was the only player that is good, and he'll be one of the first 5 players drafted in the NFL draft this year. So him being out, the case being what it is, Army being a military team, and we call this out in the bowl report here as well. Whenever a military team is in a bowl game, you either back them or you don't bet the other team, because the military teams, they come with 100% focus and 100% discipline in bowl games.
Yes.
They're 23-4 to the spread when they take on 600 or better opponents in bowl games. That's a big, strong number against the Houston football team that, one, doesn't bring any defense to the table, and two, is very undisciplined. The other side of the coin is, and again, we call this out in the bowl report, Army leads the nation in time of possession. Houston is the worst team in the nation in time of possession.
Wow. So
you have the best playing the worst.
Interesting.
It leaves little time for this Houston offense to be on the field here against this Army offense, which is going to just pound and pound on the Houston Cougar defense here. I think Army's one of the better bowl plays in the card this year.
All right, we agree on that one. So 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Let's go to, I got 2 more that were my top plays. I've got Purdue as a 3.5 to 4-point dog against Auburn. We've talked a lot about Purdue this year because this is a team that, even when they have lost games, they've really only had like 1 game all year where they haven't been in it. Everything else, a lot of close losses. So even 3.5, 4 points is going to mean something. Jeff Brom decides to stay, gets the extension. That should be a jolt of energy for the program. They are 2-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread as a dog this year. Brom is 3-0 all time in bowls. Malzahn is 1-4 in bowls at Auburn. Stidham says I'm going pro, so after the game, after the season, so he's already kind of distracted. Chip Lindsey, the offensive coordinator, resigned. There's just too many distractions at Auburn right now, and they haven't won any big games in the last few years. And I just think Purdue, based on what a great season it was, I think they end this season on a winning note.
I think this is one of the classic cases you would make when you're handicapping bowl games. You're looking to make a case for a team that's thrilled to be where they are in the bowl, and their opponent is really disappointed to be where they are in the bowl. Auburn last year, last 2 years in bowl games, they played in the Sugar Bowl and the Peach Bowl. They settled on the Music City Bowl here. It's a football team that is expected to challenge Alabama at the beginning of the season and really, really went south real quick. They have no running game. And if you take a look, again, at those versus fellow bowl teams charts, you'll see that they played 6 bowl teams this year. They went 2-4 straight up and against the spread. They only out-yarded one of those 6 opponents, and they were beat by an average of 115 yards a game against other bowl teams. I'm with you. I think Purdue is a really live dog in this game.
And then the last one the last one I'm going with is also on the 28th, like the Music City, and that is going to be Syracuse as a 2-point dog against West Virginia. Now, look, I understand it was 7. I could have got 7, but I wouldn't like the game at 7. I was thinking about it a little bit, but then all of a sudden, Will Grier, I'm leaving, I ain't playing, and the line goes down to 1.5 or 2. They also lose their left tackle. Their offensive coordinator leaves, takes the head coaching job at Texas State. That's 1 down, 2 down. That's 1 check for Syracuse, 2 checks for Syracuse, 3 checks for Syracuse. Daniel Holgerson is 1-4 in his last 5 bowl games. That's 4 checks for Syracuse. Dino Babers gets the contract extension. It's been a great season for Syracuse. They're feeling good about going to a bowl. First time Syracuse in a bowl since 2013. They're feeling good. They want to be there. They're an exciting team. West Virginia's got to play a backup quarterback and a backup coordinator. I'm taking Syracuse.
Well, the example I pointed out before about Purdue and Auburn, about 2 teams being in games one wants to, the other doesn't, this might be a better example. Because West Virginia had their sights set on winning the Big 12 championship and perhaps even being a participant in the college football playoffs. 2 losses later, they find themselves in the Camping World Bowl. That's a devastating drop, if you will, for a football team.
Yeah.
On the flip side, as you mentioned here, Syracuse is thrilled to be where they are. Dino Babers took over this program, and this is the stamp he puts in the program. He's finally got the team turned around. They become a winning team. They're a bowl team. They also happen to be an ACC bowl dog who have been very good in bowl games when they come off underdog wins. They just upset Boston College their last game. And those ACC Bulldogs in this role are 13-4 against the spread. Without Will Grier being there, I don't think West Virginia, it's going to be very difficult. I don't think Holderson can give his lifetime best speech for this football team to get this team up here. Camping World Bowl or college football playoffs. I know which team I like in this game. That's Syracuse with you as well.
All right, so those are my top picks for the bowl season. I've already posted them on the Prime Sports Network website. And, of course, I forgot to mention that, or I think I mentioned it, but just in case I didn't, you've got your best bets in the 2018 Playbook College Bowl stat report as well. You got 3 of them, I think I noticed. Is that what they are?
Yeah, we isolate. We put win margins in every game, and our win margins done really well the last 2 years, I believe.
Okay.
Just taking the win margin on the game alone, we're not having any, but just on the games alone, in this report, we're 52-30 in every game.
Okay.
But we do isolate 3 best bet bowl games that they're also included inside the report.
All right, sounds good. Thanks a lot for doing it. I know we couldn't get the show done on a normal day on Wednesday, so we rescheduled here for Friday. At least we got on the air before the bowl season begins. We'll definitely continue to talk more about this playbook, though, over the next couple of weeks, because we still have a few weeks to go before we zero in on some playoff game analysis. So it should be a lot of fun. Well, hopefully it's a lot of fun watching these bowl games. Hopefully we get some entertaining games. And we can also put some new check marks by our wins and losses. And, of course, we want to put them on the win side. So, Mark, appreciate it as always. Thanks a lot, and enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, my pleasure as always, Greg. Keep checking those boxes.
Yeah.
Enjoy the games, and I'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Mark. All right, that's Marc Lawrence, and you can check out Mark on his website at playbook.com. You can also go to covers.com. That's where Mark is available, where you can check out his picks, and you can order his picks, along with our other analysts at covers.com, who actually we had Teddy Savransky on Thursday and Dave Koken on Tuesday. So not sure when we're going to, I guess we're going to go right back to our next regular schedule next week with Mark back on Wednesdays. So bottom line is these guys, are, as usual, will be split up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. So that'll give us a good opportunity to take a look and update the bowl season after. Actually, I think when we start talking to Dave next week, because I don't think there's another bowl game after this Saturday until Tuesday or Wednesday. Tuesday. The Boca Raton Bowl is Tuesday. By the way, we have scheduled our next show is going to be Monday, and that is going to be with Dan Shanka. So we have scheduled that. That's in the books. Dan Shanka, ourlads.com, National Draft Scout, will join me for the first time this season. It'll be the Our Lads Guide to the 2019 NFL Draft Show. So it's going to be Monday afternoon. So we're going to take. I'm going to go over. We have a list of players to talk about. There are some players that are playing this weekend. No question that you want to zero in on as far as the draft. For instance, let me just see here. I'll give you some guys to zero in on. Let's see. You got the receiver from North Texas. You can take a look at him against Utah State. I mean, look, I'm very interested in Jordan Love. I don't know what kind of pro he could be at this point. Still kind of early. Kid's got a great arm, though, and he's only a sophomore. So I think Jordan Love is definitely a kid to keep an eye on at Utah State. They also have a pretty good the TCU transfer on defense to keep an eye on. The kicker, actually, believe it or not, could be one of the top kickers. Well, he's only a junior, so he'll be back. For Fresno, I've said before, Keyshawn Johnson, I like him. I think he's going to make a nice pro. Not a great pro, but a nice pro. Fresno State, and I think he might be the best player on the field when they take on Arizona State with N'Keal Harry not available in that game. Eastern Michigan, you wouldn't think that there would be pros to keep an eye on at Eastern Michigan, but I got to tell you, keep an eye on several defenders for the Eagles, most notably Max Crosby and the defensive end, and Brody Hoying, who basically plays like a safety linebacker position. So those are the two guys that I think could actually end up in the pros. I think Rockwall, the linebacker, is a tough kid too. But Max Crosby and Brody Hoying, keep an eye on those two guys as interesting sleeper guys in the NFL. Not stars, but guys that can contribute in the NFL. And for Appalachian State, you can also Jalen Moore is not going to be available, unfortunately. I like Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore is a kid that I think hopefully he'll be okay after the ankle injury. I think he's definitely a pro running back. But the other kid that took over for him, Darrington Evans, watch out for him. He's a very fast running back, very fast kid, 1,000 yards rushing, even though he was the backup running back for the first 6 games this year. So he's an exciting kid to keep an eye on, too, for App State. Clifton Duck, the corner for App State, too, is somebody to watch for the Mountaineers. And Stockstill's a nice quarterback from Middle Tennessee, but he just doesn't have the arm strength. So I don't really think there are any top pros to keep an eye on for the Blue Raiders. All right, we'll talk more about that with Dan Shanka on Monday's show. Thanks to Ted Savransky. I'm Greg DePalma. Enjoy the bowl games, everybody. Alpha Mike Foxtrot.